Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Laura Beck. I'm with the Eden Alternative, and I'm so excited to have a conversation today with these three dynamic women from an organization called Homewatch CareGivers. And our topic today is being an ally, diversity, inclusion, and equity in home care. And so before we get started, I just want to introduce you to everybody. First, I'm going to start with Brianne Stewart. Hey, Brianne. Brianne is the owner of Homewatch CareGivers of Ann Arbor and Novi, Michigan, which both opened in 2008. Brianne handles the strategic outlook, financials, operations, and marketing for both locations. It's Brianne's passion for family and entrepreneurship that actually led her to open Homewatch CareGivers. Her first experience with home care was with her own family when she became a caregiver to her grandfather, who lived with Parkinson's disease, and her father, who had colon cancer. And it was during this time that Brianne realized the power of caregiver and hospice support. Both helped grant her father's and her grandfather's final wishes to remain at home, which ignited her passion for these services. Brianne serves on the Homewatch CareGivers Allies Committee, which you're going to be hearing a lot about today, to show leadership and representation. And so thanks for being here, Brianne.
Thank you so much, Laura.
And Deb Nelson is the owner of Homewatch CareGivers of Edina, Minnesota. I had to practice that before we get started. Along with her passion for serving clients, Deb is proud to provide a safe and supportive workplace for the caregivers. Deb has a BA in Human Services and earned her nursing assistant certification when she opened her home care business in 2012. Deb serves on the Homewatch CareGivers Allies Committee, which challenges her to become both an ally and a better human. And so thanks, Deb, for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And Hillary Wooden joined the staff of the Homewatch CareGivers corporate office in June 2021, where she helps to onboard and support new franchise owners, assisting them in operations and following their local regulations. Hillary became interested in caregiving when managing her mother's care from 900 miles away. Not an easy thing to do. Hillary became interested in caregiving when managing her mother's care, and this led her and her husband to open a Homewatch CareGivers franchise in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County, California in 2013. They both have found satisfaction in providing compassionate, person-directed care within their community. And as a member of Allies, Hillary looks for ways that franchise owners can promote diversity, inclusion, and equity in their businesses. And so, hello, Hillary.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And so, Hillary, while we're focused on you, I'm wondering if you could just sort of give us a frame of reference for the folks that have decided to join us today. It might help for them to hear a little bit about Homewatch CareGivers, how it's structured, who you serve, where you serve. Could you give us a picture?
Absolutely. Homewatch CareGivers is a franchised in-home care company, and it was started as a family-owned business in 1980. So it has been around for a good number of years. We just 41 years this summer. Nationwide, I think we have 125 separate owners with 200 territories. We also have owners in Canada and in Central America. So we have quite an extensive reach. The thing that drew me to Homewatch CareGivers is this belief in exhibiting compassion in all aspects of life. Compassion for our clients, certainly, but also compassion for our employees, our caregivers, and within the community. So it's a very positive culture, I think, that's growing exponentially. And so we're really trying to increase our reach. As we know, seniors in the United States are multiplying. We are getting more and more of them, and there aren't enough physical facilities for people to live in if they need extra care. And so we need to look to care in the home instead. And that's the whole purpose of Homewatch CareGivers. Like I said, I am a business owner. I've been an owner since 2013. And when the opportunity came to join the Franchise Support Center, I just couldn't pass it up because I think this is such a dynamic and wonderful organization.
Looks like you're on mute, Laura.
Caught me. So there we go with the mute button. I was just sharing that I couldn't agree more. My relationship with your organization actually began back in 2011. I had the opportunity to come and speak at one of your conferences. And when I spoke to the franchise owners just during a reception, I was so touched and moved by the commitment, by the passion. And when we started our conversation last week about today's topic, I can see that in all of you. So I'm looking forward to everyone getting a little taste of that. So thanks for offering that frame of reference, Hillary. I think now what we want to do is sort of bring our focus in on the topic today, which is your initiative called Allies. And so if somebody would be willing first to share what that acronym stands for, because it is an acronym, and then maybe share with us how it's structured. I know there's a committee structure to this, which probably makes it very collaborative. And maybe you can point out what each of your roles is in it. Does somebody want to take a stab at answering?
I think our fearless leader, Deb, should take a stab at it.
Sure, I'm happy to. So when we first started talking about having a diversity committee, we really wanted the name of the committee to be meaningful to not just the people who were on the committee, but that outward facing to our franchisees and to our employees, that they could see that we were really committed to this initiative. And so as we started talking about things, we had all kinds of different ideas, and the term ally kept coming up, and we wondered how could we use allies and have it again be meaningful. So allies stands for, the A is aware, L is listen, lead, include, engage, and support. And so for us, those are the kinds of things that we want to accomplish as members of this committee, so that we are leading by example. We are including all people who are interested. We start engaging with people we've never engaged with before, supporting each other when times are hard, trying to find answers when we don't really know what the right thing is to say, and then truly being aware of our own biases, our own frailties, our own mistakes when we make them. And try to listen to people who are different from us, and look for ways that we have common things together and find ways to support each other. So that's kind of where we started, and it feels good to be able to use the word ally and have it be meaningful to us. Brianne, you want to talk about anything else?
Yeah, I just think that this group was formed by concerned owners, corporate employees, to promote education, advocacy, and awareness for people of color, but people also that identify with the LGBTQ community and other marginalized groups. Personally, I'm on the advocacy subcommittee with the goal of building awareness and social change at the local, state, and federal level on behalf of Homewatch CareGivers. And it feels great to be a part of that group.
And I was just going to say that there are 4 committees. So Brianne is part of advocacy. There is a communications group, there is a workforce inclusion group, and there's an engagement group. I'm on the engagement committee, and for me, partly we divided it up because it seemed like an overwhelming task for us to think about starting a diversity initiative. And so these became the 4 areas that we felt were most critical to talk about. And so for me, engagement was a lot about personal development and personal learning. This is for me where it ties up to Eden so well, is you never stop learning. You're always adapting to your new life, however your life changes as you get older or as your circumstances change. And so the engagement part for me was that's the committee I wanted to be on, because that's what was the most meaningful for me too. So Hillary, you want to talk about the other 2?
Yeah, I'm on the advocacy committee with Brianne, and the other committees is the workforce. I could consider the HR committee, and this is really made up of owners who have experience in the HR world and looking to make sure that we have sound business practices that comply with the EEOC, that our hiring practices and our recruiting practices are equitable, that they're don't have implicit bias built in. And that's been a real problem in the past about putting out ads that use maybe terminology that will winnow people out unintentionally based on whatever group they may be in. And then our final group is the communications group, and they're just sort of in charge of sharing our message with the network as a whole. I also wanted to back up a bit and say that Homewatch CareGivers is actually one of 10 service-based brands under the umbrella of the Authority brands, and the Authority brands itself has its own diversity and inclusion committee that includes members of leadership team from all the 10 brands. And so this is very much a top-down initiative. We very much get support from our parent company, which feels really good to me, that this is something that we take seriously, and we understand that there is a real need in the world of small business to be part of this bigger picture.
Yeah, and I'd like to piggyback off of what Hillary said about our workforce inclusion group. They also were charged with training. So we have a multitude of training opportunities internally, and it was about packaging the training for our office staff and for our caregiving staff, so they know that they have that opportunity to grab those packages and learn just a little bit more about someone that they may have not known about before.
So that definitely paints a picture for me in terms of how the committee structure works, which is really helpful. I may have more questions about that as we roll, because I imagine as we continue our conversation, there are going to be some stories that reveal a little bit more about how those committees serve your purpose. But the thing I actually want to zoom back out a little bit and go back to big picture. And, with anything, especially in the work that we do, right, there are sort of these origin stories. Like, what was that moment for you? We read some of those in your bios, didn't we? And in terms of allies, I'm curious about what motivated each of you to get involved, and what was the impact each of you wanted to see or realize as a result of your involvement. And anyone can go first. I see Deb is already unmuted.
I'll go. I'll be brave. So, I really thought a lot about how I was going to answer this question, because I could take up the whole hour talking about why and how I got involved. But I actually tried to distill it down to, I'm 63 years old, and I've spent a lot of years of my life being outraged by things that I've seen happen in our country. And I never really thought I could do anything about it. It seemed like, I could live a good life. I could teach my children well. I can vote for what I believe in. But it didn't seem like I could really do anything. What could I do? I'm just a person. And then I'm kind of ashamed to say it took me till Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement, and unfortunately the murder of George Floyd in my city, to move me to truly want to act in a way that I hadn't in all these years of being outraged. I never really found a way to say, I need to do something now. And so for me, it was of course I wanted to be involved in this committee. Of course that would be a way for me to do more than just be outraged, and do more than just be upset, and finally try to make a difference in my own small circle, in my own small circle of influence, in whatever small way that might be. Even if it's just teaching myself to be a better ally, that's an improvement over what I was doing before this time. So that's my little story.
I love that response. I also love your shirt. Can you show
thank
it to us?
you. I love my shirt too.
Yeah,
I get lots of positive comments when I wear it too. Everybody, I love your shirt. I love your shirt. So thank you.
Who else would like to
and I love your passion, Deb. Hillary, you want to take it, or do you want me to take a stab?
So yeah, my story is kind of, I'll go back, sort of the big picture is my dad was a lawyer who represented people who were kind of the little guy. And he really instilled in me this sense of justice and fairness. And that's been with me my whole life. And as part of Homewatch CareGivers, I realized that we had an opportunity to, like Deb said, be a small person who promotes justice and fairness. because as business owners, we have some power and some control to change how things are done, even if it's just within our own businesses. And as time went by, and again with the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, and increased distress in our country, like Deb, it spurred me to go to our leadership before I even worked for Homewatch CareGivers directly, to go to the leadership and say, what can we do? What can we do to promote this? What can we do to help people who maybe are struggling because the situation is stacked unfairly against them? And I think that's true for all three of us, is we can all say we helped spur this movement, this allies movement, individually. And we have such a dynamic leader in Jennifer Tucker, our COO, that she recognized this and she said, okay, this is something I want to do. And I know I got a team on board already. And so called us together and said, let's do this thing. Let's get this. And so she's sort of an overseeing presence in our committee. She is a participant on the parent company's diversity and inclusion committee. But she really wants it to be ours and wants us to lead it, which I think is very empowering.
Love it.
Yeah, and I'd say personally, I feel like I have the strength and longevity in the Homewatch CareGivers brand to not only advocate for myself, but every owner, every office staff, every caregiving staff person that needs to feel represented. Mm-hmm. There have been extremely hurtful and derogatory comments made to me personally about my race, when people had no idea what my race was or what I am. And many times it's because of my ambiguous look that often put people on edge, or they'd say to me, I don't know what I can say around you. Or they'd make excuses that they can't trust me, or I'm aggressive, or when I see my male counterpart saying almost the same exact thing with no consequence, but they would create something around me. So really representation is the key. And that's why I decided to do this during the Black Lives Matter movement, when it first became I hate to say it this way, but hot subject, if you will. It was a painful time. I know it was a painful time in our entire country, but a lot of things kind of came to surface, and a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to address, but I knew I had to, for the people that work for me, for the folks that look at me as a leader. And that's why I'm here.
Wow. What amazing stories. I knew they would be. Yes. We all have very personal journeys that bring us to the things that we want to make a difference in, right? So along those lines, when you first started thinking about bringing allies to life, I'm sure you had a specific vision for it. And I'm really curious to hear, what was that specific vision and where is the reality right now? Just curious if, what's the distinction, if there is one?
For me, I think a big part of my vision was really awareness. And that was part of what kind of drew me to this. I mean, we've had conversations and I've heard people say, well, I'm obviously not a racist. I hire people of color. And in their mind, that is an absolutely true statement, right? And maybe we need to heighten the awareness of, would your employees make that same statement about you, right? How we see ourselves and how others see us, there's often a disconnect. And so I think, if we want to talk in the business world, we're all business people, we need to create a business argument for what we do. And the business argument is, this is a tough time to be a small business owner, and anything you can do to be the employer of choice, to reduce employee turnover and to increase employee satisfaction, is a sound business practice. And I would say the number one challenge facing any home care provider in this country right now is finding qualified, exceptional employees who stick with you a long time. So if you want to parse this down to purely numbers, dollars and cents, people who are compassionate, understanding, open-minded employers can put some oomph behind their words. So when they say, well, I can't be a racist because I employ people of color, well, show it to us through your actions. And that for me, that's a big goal of this committee is increasing that awareness in our network, that just saying I'm not a racist doesn't necessarily mean that everyone perceives you as not a racist.
And I think in addition to that too, so much of it's, that yes, there's a business case. Yes, there's the just do the right thing. We're here to be doing the right thing for ourselves, our employees, our communities. But it comes down to, I believe, individual commitment to equality, justice, in how we live our life. We have to live just lives. We have to live in a way that makes it safe for our caregivers to come to us with any problems or issues that they have, that they feel they're heard, they feel they're included in the choices that we make for how the company is run. I tell our caregivers at every orientation, you guys don't get to run the show, but we sure want to know what you think and what you want and what motivates you and what makes you happy. Our job is to help our employees be successful in whatever way that means. And each person is different. What they need is different. We don't treat them exactly the same, but we treat them fairly and equitably. So I think that's a piece of home care that might just be so different than other businesses, that the work that they do is so personal and emotional, and it takes such a toll on our employees that we have to be sure that we are not part of the place that makes their life difficult. We have to be the place that's safe for them. We have to be the place where they can be who they are safely and proudly and happily, so that they can do good work. And if you're a person in home care and you're unable to have that happening in your office and in your company, then I would bet you're going to struggle, like Hillary said, finding and keeping those great caregivers. And it really becomes such a personal journey for a franchisee.
So for me, when we were creating Allies, my vision was twofold. To reach people that were just hungry for information about diversity and people that were confused about the movements, including the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement. I'm not an expert. I know that for a fact, but I am an expert at being me. And I'm also an expert at how I felt during that time and how I feel now, and what power and hope those movements gave me. And so I'd say the reality is, we know that movements and vision are good, but implementation of movements and visions are hard. So we're in such a taxing industry, home care in general, and many times we're dealing with real life human crisis or working through human resource issues like we had mentioned before, and all of which was exacerbated by the pandemic and the need to keep people safe at its very basic level. And so for me, I think that I'll put a prediction out there that I think in the next 2 years, with consistent outreach from our group, we will have reached many of our goals as an organization.
All right, awesome. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Brianne is the queen of setting goals. And so I love that so much.
Well, I think I'm glad you pointed that out, Hillary, because what I took away as I was listening to you, Brianne, was, do you have a goal that's especially close to your heart that I'm sure you would like all of them to be reached, but are there one or two that just like really stand out to you that just feel really, really important to you?
Yeah, there are. One in particular, like we've talked about, we have several franchise owners in our organization, and my goal is to reach 10% of the folks that are kind of hiding from this subject. And the great thing about that is that, we get together as franchise owners, we're talking about business. I've been in the franchise for 13 years. And so most of the franchisees are my friends. And I think I can weave some of this conversation in without being too intimidating about the subject. So that's number one goal.
All right. I love that. Any others?
I'd say, I would love, and I don't have a percentage on this one. That's why I hesitated bringing it up. But just implementing on the wonderful things that we have in our toolboxes already, the training, some of our caregiver outreach. All of these things are just in this nice, tidy bow, this box with a bow on it. And I think all we need is our franchisees to grab that box and just open it up. That's it. And if they do, they'll find a plethora of work and knowledge that we have really worked hard on over the last year and a half.
If I could add to that, one of the things, kind of talking a little bit about what our goals were and what reality is, we were very ambitious with providing information in a way that people could use it easily and quickly. We have in the group that I'm working with, we have 3 different levels. If you're just just learning about racism and equity and diversity, you can start here. If you have a little bit more experience or more knowledge, you can go to here. And then there's a 3rd area. There's books to read, there's videos to watch, there's, many, many different resources. But the problem is you have to make the time to do it. And just because we made it available, even in a palatable form, doesn't demand that people use it. And even when it's like Brianne talked about uncomfortable things, there are, over this past 2 years when we've been working on this initiative, I've read so many books that like blew my mind. Like, you're kidding. This is the truth, not what I believed to be true. This is history, not what I believed to be history. This is my privilege, unearned, that I have. And what am I going to do about that? And how am I going to manage these feelings of these sometimes painful feelings that come up? And if there are other franchisees in our group that are having some of those feelings, who are they talking to? Do they feel safe talking to any of us on the committee? So far, not a lot of conversation. And so that we don't know if that means nobody's looking or nobody wants to talk about it. So Brianne's effort of finding 10% to talk to, I think that's great, because we have never initiated the conversation. Now it falls into our lap as the allies group to be the ones to initiate. And if not the conversation, because you don't just walk up to somebody and say, hi, let's talk about racism. You're just not going to do that. But to be in the room, to be welcoming, to speak up when we hear something that's not okay, that we have all heard those things in group meetings and probably said nothing. And now we've become maybe a little bit more emboldened to have a response. And that as we learn to be allies, that's my thing. We are not allies. We are learning to be allies. And as we learn to be allies, we will have to step up and face some of these challenges in the best way we can. And we'll make mistakes, but do the best that we can to improve our culture as best we can.
Deb, I so appreciate you saying we are not allies, we're learning to be allies. And that transparency, I mean, as I'm listening to each of you speak about this and the dreams you have for how allies will really kind of catch fire in the organization, this thing about people feeling safer or being afraid that they're not going to do it right, or they're going to mess up, or in trying to understand more and trying to develop a deeper awareness, they might misstep. I'm just wondering if you've bumped up against that a fair amount. And I mean, it sounds like you're working really hard to create a reassuring and a welcoming environment wherever people are. And so I'm just wondering, I mean, I know this wasn't kind of part of our set question list, but wondering if you have anything to share for people who want to create a similar initiative. What are some of the ways that you're exploring creating that sense of safety so that people just aren't so afraid to get messy? It's almost like we're afraid to be messy when we're learning, right? We just want to do it right, especially when it involves, people's story and their experience. Just wondering.
When we first started meeting to develop this committee, and I don't think we ever actually said this, but we just kind of came into it with, I'm just going to listen to whatever anyone else has to say. I think each one of us and the other members of the committee, and there were several of us, came in with a set in their mind as to what's going on and why is it important. But we really just talked. And it took us quite a long time to get off the ground. We just talked and talked. What is the need? What is our personal experience? What are we feeling? What are we afraid of? What are we concerned about? And we listened and just listened with an open mind. And so there was a lot of groundwork before we got anything sort of official or written down or off the ground or launched to the network, because I think we needed to create that safe space for ourselves and really hear each other and really have that open mind and eliminate those unconscious biases. And we did some outreach as well. We looked at the makeup of our committee, and it wasn't massively diverse. The home care is a very female heavy realm. And so we made some effort to reach out to some of the men in the support center or who are owners to try to get some more of a balance. And we each shared, our personal beliefs, and we listened to each other. And I really think that's where it needs to start. It needs to start with a real authentic dialogue, is my personal belief. And with the understanding that maybe somebody's going to say something during that dialogue that I don't agree with or that's upsetting to me, but I need to listen because it's that person's truth. Right? And then you can come to terms from there.
Hillary, that's so great. And one thing I would add, we had a couple of people on the committee who absolutely needed to be on the committee, and they didn't know they did because we were all kind of, oh, this is going to be great. Everybody's going to love it. It's going to be fabulous. And then there were a couple people who said, oh, hold on. You might be missing how some people might perceive this. What about this? He kind of played the devil's advocate. And every single time we, like Hillary said, opened up to that other perspective, it made the group better, which is the perfect analogy of why diversity is important. Those different perspectives, those different life experiences, those things that make us individually who we are, make our company better, make our committees better, make our world better. And we just need to find space and make space for that diverse population, our company, our organization, our cities, everywhere, to be a safe place for all those ideas that will come forward.
Awesome. Brian, no pressure. Just wanted to see if there was anything you wanted to toss in on this.
For once, I don't have anything to add.
It's all good. It's all good. Well, I feel like this sort of segues nicely into the next question we were going to explore together. And that was, are there some specific challenges that have come up as you've been implementing allies? This feels like, it could have been one of them, but you've been finding clearly some powerful ways to address that. when we talk about the challenges, though, I'm curious, challenges not only in the individual teams at the franchise member level, but maybe just in the network as a whole. And so, yeah, first the challenges, and then are there any lessons that you learned as you've been facing these challenges that you think maybe others might be interested in hearing if they want to take this on themselves?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this. I'll agree with what Deb said earlier, and I think a major challenge is just the ability to make this a priority. When there are so many priorities, business priorities that we have as small business owners. And from a franchise network perspective, I believe we still haven't addressed the primary need to satisfy our home care owners' questions. And there's three that come to mind to me. One is, what's in it for me? How is this going to impact my community in a positive way? And how is this going to improve my bottom line? And I think we need to continue to explore those specific issues, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that there's autonomy with diversity and inclusion amongst our other home care owners. And once we're able to answer those questions, I think that we'll have some movement.
Yeah, I'm in a unique position because as a franchise owner, I can speak a lot more freely to people. And if I'm at a conference and somebody says something, I can just sort of, I'm going to call you on it and whatever. But as a member of the support staff, I have a different type of engagement. And so, it's for me, the challenge is learning to, as Deb said, challenge people if they say something that is truly inappropriate, but I need to challenge them in a way that is still supportive and is non-confrontational, because ultimately we need to work together in a different way than two owners who are peers work together than somebody who's providing support. And so that's something I'm personally just working on. I've worked with somebody who said something that wasn't, blatantly offensive, but it was tiptoeing on the edge of offensive. And so I had to come back and create that script for me. How do I respectfully challenge them and direct the conversation in a positive way, without being too ambiguous, right? And I have the support of our COO, Jennifer Tucker, who said, yes, you absolutely, if somebody says something that is offensive, you absolutely have the right to say, if we're going to continue this conversation, we need to address this first and make some pretty simple changes so that it's an appropriate conversation, which I'm so thankful for, because there are not a lot of COOs out there in her position who would say the same thing. I think mostly the message might be, yeah, it's unfortunate that they made that comment, just ignore it and move on.
Well, I just want to comment that is brilliant to get that clear. The permission, the directive to say, absolutely hold each other accountable. You have my permission to do that. Because I could really see that being something that would maybe scare people about, like, okay, we want to move forward. We want to, improve the way we're talking about these things and how we're showing up for each other, with each other. But what if I get in trouble, or someone tries to get me in trouble because I offend them? Wow. So that is an excellent example of Principle 10, right? With the Eden Alternative, which is focused on how all of this begins with leadership. And I'm really impressed with Jennifer Tucker's willingness to take a really strong stand there. It's a great example for other leaders. Go ahead.
It's not just, I could say it confidently, it's the majority of our leadership team that is very vocal about this. So she doesn't exist in a bubble. It's like I said, top down, and it's across many, many functions on our leadership team.
Well, ideal for sure.
I just want to circle back to Brianne. She is a good example of the differences of perspective that we have on our allies committee, that, it's easy to get emotional about diversity and inclusion. It's easy to have strong emotional feelings about it, and that's good enough reason for some people to let's just do this because it's the right thing to do, like I said earlier. But Brianne talking about finding the time to make this initiative purposeful when we have so many other things that occupy our time day to day. At least, I think that's the challenge, and that's the goal, is find the things that you can do. Find the time that you do have. What is your priority? How will you come forward? What works for you? And do that thing. Just find the thing and do it. For me, it's been just learning what I didn't know. I can't read enough books. I can't get enough change in my history lessons that show me a different world view than the one I grew up having, which helps me then to just understand people who have different background and different experiences than me. Because so many times there are times at work sometimes, and we have caregivers or employees that have challenges in their life, and we say, how is this happening? How are they getting by? How are they living their life? Because there's drama, or there's pain, and there's emotion, and there's just problems. How can we view the life that they lead, and how can we be more helpful to them? How can we touch our other franchisees who have different experiences than we do, to make the system stronger? So for me, the challenge has been serving up too much information, but maybe the solution is helping our individual franchisees just find a few things to do that are easy. Like Brianne, why don't you talk about your advocacy group and some of those things? Because that sometimes all it is you decide to pay a $25 to a cause that matters to you. That's different than what you've done before.
Right. And so, I'm getting some feedback. Sorry about that, Deb. So I wanted to make advocacy extremely easy. Easy is better for me. And so Hillary and I created a calendar of once a month, choose something that you can do, whether that be write your legislator about something that is important to you, whether that be attend a LGBTQ parade, or sign up for a specific association, a Latino association, whatever it is. And we've got a variety of things. And I actually, during this, learned a ton. And that was the great thing about it is, diversity from my perspective was just my perspective. And I increased my knowledge base 1,000-fold with that specific project. And I was just so thankful that we kind of came up with a simple lesson there and were able to implement on it. And again, now it's time to continue to implement amongst our franchisees.
And if I could just jump on that, one thing I've done in the last few months is I've made it a point on social media to find thought leaders that represent groups different from me. And I follow them not in an interest of participating, but just of learning. Because I think a lot of these groups just don't need another white woman chiming in, right? And it's my turn to just shut up and listen. And so that's been a really powerful thing in my own personal education, is just who are the people who share in other groups, and what can I learn? And I'm going to be brutally honest. They say things that make me uncomfortable, that I don't agree with, but that's not my job to argue with them. My job is to listen to them and try to understand where they're coming from. And it's been a great personal experiment. I mean, I was kind of getting bored with Facebook, and now I'm like, oh, I've got to find out what people are saying. And so I've become much more intrigued by the people I'm following, because I'm learning so much about life that I had no clue.
So I love this. I love the example that each of you have just offered in terms of how do you slow drip to make sure that people have a chance to access their own enthusiasm. it's hard, right? When we're excited, it's just like fire hose, man. We want them to get it all, and we want them to get it all right now. And that isn't always how it works best. So I love how you have these simple things that people can go, wow, I can do that. Like that I can take in my busy day and see if I can find that moment. And yes, the opportunity to just offer yourself the chance to be a fly on the wall and learn and be curious. Curiosity is where it's at, right? Now, I'm really happy to say we have a comment, and there are a couple from Scott Cartwright, and I'm wondering, Kathy, if we could pop the question. Yes. How do the franchise owners work with clients or their families when they are offensive towards caregivers of color? Have any of you come across this?
Well, yeah, we've all definitely dealt with this because we're in a personal environment. And from my perspective, it truly is, there's not one answer, right? It truly depends on what the situation is. I'll give you an example. Many of our clients that we work with have dementia. And as we know, with dementia, there's that neurological disorder that in many situations will make people act out in a way that is unintentional. And so unintentional acting out or offensive words towards someone, in my opinion, is different than intention, a family member that is trying to abuse. Now, having said that, we try to coach, we try to redirect. Many of those, we've all been through those dementia courses. But of course, if one of our caregivers feels uncomfortable or cannot think in that space of this is the disease process talking, then we'll make sure to keep that caregiver in a safe environment and either change the caregiver, move the caregiver to another safe space, or try to do more coaching. But I'd say in many of these situations, coaching is key. When it comes to family members and there are words said that are derogatory or offensive, in those situations, it truly is, it still can be a coaching situation. Many people have not been, in a personal relationship with someone with of color, or someone with a different sexual background other than what they're used to. And so in that situation, we're coaching, we're talking with them. If for some reason there's a family member that will not budge, again, my primary goal is our caregivers and our caregivers' safety and our office staff safety. We will remove ourselves from the situation if we feel like it's not going to move the needle.
Great.
One of the things that we've realized that, Scott, this is a question that we have too. So our annual conference is going to be virtual this year. And so our allies group is going to do a session on exactly that, a day in the life of a caregiver. And these are challenges that happened truly in real life to one of our team members. And we're going to do breakout sessions on how would you handle this situation, helping them through a supportive environment of working with other franchisees, how to find the answers when you are faced with those difficult situations, because they will and do come up. The people that we care for are in their 80s. The world that they grew up in was overtly racist. They have beliefs that they've carried with them all this time, and convincing an 85-year-old the way that they think is not right is probably impossible. So what's the solution then? How will we, like Brianne said, how will we protect our caregivers? Can we preserve the relationship with this client? We might end up saying, no, we can't. or we work with them to make other arrangements as best we can, considering the situation. And you know, you have to do what's right for your company as well. So you make the best choice with what you have available to you. But trying to give our franchisees situations and then some words maybe and some input from other franchisees who've had the situation happen to them, and hopefully, you know, franchisees who've experienced it from, I'm the person of color that was offended and this is how I would want you to speak to me. Those are the kinds of things that we want to get to with our group as well.
Okay. Good stuff. Scott has another question. I just want you to know, Scott, I'm saving it for last. So a couple of other things I want to slip in there first. So great. This powerful, very helpful information, and it sort of segues perfectly into the next question. And so clearly you have great commitment, each of you, to supporting diversity and inclusion and equity in your operations, in your dealings, in your communications, et cetera. And so how is this showing up in terms of your services with your clients? Are you getting any feedback about this that you'd like to share? Or maybe there's some things that you're noticing that are new, that stand out to you as a result of your own work with this and the work that you're doing within either your personal franchise or even at the corporate level, if you want to share.
Honestly, it's really quite new. And so I think we're so early in the stages. We're still exploring the best way to get the message out and to measure the success of the message. We're kind of in our beta stage still. I will say, you know, at the corporate level, our friend development, the people who bring new owners in has been fantastic about not targeting, but encouraging owners who represent different nationalities, different places of birth, different perspectives. And since one of my basic belief systems is that the more diverse a group is, the stronger it is, I have great hopes for the future. Because when I started 8 years ago, we were not a very diverse group. And I love the idea that within 3 to 5 years, we're going to be an enormously diverse group. So these are baby steps. We're still very much at the early stages, I think. But it's only great laying the groundwork for a lot more traction.
Yeah, and I'd say personally, I have a very diverse team of individuals in my organization with extremely diverse backgrounds from all over the country. But I also don't think that we're done. There's many more cultures, backgrounds that I want to add to my team, including refugees, people with disabilities, people re-entering the workforce for one reason or another. And I do believe that when employees see themselves represented in management, it helps them feel that they're being treated fairly, or at least they know that they can take the way they look out of the equation when they're receiving feedback. And so I don't think I'll ever be done with trying to diversify my team and diversify the way I think as well.
And Brianne, that's such a great point, is it doesn't just happen. You can't just say, oh, we have a diversity initiative and that's what we're going to pay attention to. It really is an action, an active thing that you do differently, seeking out people that to round out your team. You know, the mistake you never want to make is people who think just like you. You know, better teams have different perspectives, but you do have to seek it out. You have to make it truly part of your mission, part of your culture, part of your plan moving forward to round out your team in those ways, and ways that we certainly haven't paid attention to in the past. So Brianne's a great role model for all of us.
No doubt.
Thanks, Deb.
I'm curious, you know, in terms of your involvement with our approach with the Eden Alternative, how does this line up, all of this for you? how does this line up with the 10 principles of the Eden Alternative? We've already pointed out that you have an organization that's really committed to top-down support for all of this. So, there's a Principle 10 component in there, no doubt about it. But what else? What else would you like to reflect on there?
Do you guys care if I jump in first? Sorry. For me, Eden has been part of our approach to care for, pretty much the whole time that we've been in business. And, to see these come together, for me, I know really Principle 2, a caring and inclusive atmosphere, community that makes everybody feel a part, they feel heard. Principle 8, making decisions, being involved with how your world looks. Those are, and 9, that ongoing, never giving up on learning, always adapting to your world, how it's different. So for me, Eden can be a true foundation for any diversity and inclusion initiative. Because it's just so powerful. It's such a powerful program and its own initiative that has certainly made our home care agencies stronger, our caregivers better caregivers. And so the fact that they join together makes it actually easier. You don't have to talk about them as separate things. Yeah.
And I think for the Eden, we talk a lot about the plagues of loneliness, helplessness, and boredom. And I think a great way to combat that is to be able to match a caregiver and a client who can see each other as who they truly are and truly understand each other. And I think that's really the focus of a person-directed, person-centered care, is really being able to see the individual. But I think it goes both ways. I think it's important for us to see the caregiver as well as to see the client. And that's what makes a successful match. And we've all been in, Deb and Brianna and I have been in a situation where you'll match two people who on paper couldn't be more different, but they find those connections, those commonalities, and they respect each other, and then they just see each other as people. And that's really when the magic happens, right? That's when you have a fantastic situation and they truly bond and care about each other, because it's really just about you're looking at two human beings who are connecting with each other. So for me, it's very much alleviating those 3 plagues, because when you have that connection, you don't worry about those other things.
Beautiful. Right on.
Yeah, and I'd say that the principle that resonates with me so much is number 9, human growth must never be separated from human life. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, we may all have come from different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And I'd say that our clients, our caregivers, our office staff, our referral sources, they grow and gain from diversity and different perspectives, which in itself is a product of human growth. I'd say when you surround yourself with people that speak differently, think differently, love differently, that's when you grow. And that's when you let your guard down and you learn.
Fantastic. I absolutely have, and we could go on and on. I have more questions. I'm a little frustrated, but I'm going to have to let it go. Brilliant to hear from all of you. There's just a couple of things I do want to address Scott's question. And since Principle 9 was brought up, we never stop growing and never stop learning. And, as long as we stay in that curiosity, we're always going to grow as partners in care, right? So a couple of you have said, but there are these books that blew my mind. All right. I would like to hear one book or one resource, whatever. Maybe it's a documentary that blew your mind, that you think that other people could really benefit from if they didn't have time to do anything else. What did it for you?
I started watching Kamal Bell's The United Shades of America, which is, I believe, now on either Amazon Prime or Netflix. And he was really modeled for me the idea of, I'm just going to listen. And I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to listen to your truth. That's been a really powerful impact for me.
Clearly, you're doing it.
For me, I have so many books that I could recommend and some videos. There's a book called Better Allies that is really good about just that idea of allies. How to Be Less Stupid About Race. That one, boy, in your face. White Fragility, of course. If you really want to get textbook and hear the big story, The Myth of Race is a really hard one that will change everything you think about the history that you've been taught. So Birds of All Feathers is great for kind of a work-related situation. And then, of course, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man is a series that you can't go wrong on that. So, and those are easy to take in bite-sized pieces. So it depends on if you want to read or if you want to watch. So that was more than one.
And similar to the Myth of Race is a new Jim Crow.
Oh,
which is it's a really dense and difficult book, but it is a powerful book, and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah.
Deb took mine Uncomfortable Conversations with Emmanuel Acho. He's amazing. Just great small snippets, especially if you're not a huge book reader. Jump on YouTube, subscribe to his channel. He's amazing.
Awesome. And if I may just throw one thing in the spirit of supporting the work that we all have to do that never ends, right? We are excited to share at the Eden Alternative that as of today, we have a free course available called Identity and Intersectionality, More Than the Sum of Our Parts. Kathy's just going to pop up a link to that in the comment box. Sorry, the link is a little long. Just go in there and copy it and then go bing, and it'll take you to a landing page to tell you more about the course. But that is free. It's available. Just another resource. And what an honor to hang out with the three of you. Wish we had more time. Oh, well.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was great.
Part two.
Well, that would be really interesting, actually, because you have you're really transparent about there's ways we want to grow. And so when you're ready, you let us know and we will do part two.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bye.